From the business world to the spiritual world, to be inspired and to be informed, empowering, enlightening, mentoring, enriching. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube and Instagram. Remember, you have the power to win with Dr. Valerie Daniels Carter.
Welcome, welcome, welcome. Welcome to Power to Win. I am blessed to have you join me this evening. Wow, we have had over the last 8 weeks some phenomenal information that was poured into our spirit relative to the promise of wisdom and knowledge, the promise of favor and insight. You don't want to miss understanding what the importance of these promises are to us. So take a moment and go back to my website at www.valeriedanielscarter.com and listen to those 8 series on the promise. Take a moment also right now to tag a friend, a family member, or a coworker and tell them that Power to Win is on. As a matter of fact, I know some of you start a share party every Tuesday night. It's time to start the party. So go on and start the share party. Like us and follow us on Facebook and Instagram. Subscribe to our YouTube channel, and don't forget to go to that website, www.valeriedanielscarter.com, and go to our merchandise tab. On that merchandise tab, we have some wonderful items, some Power to Win items that you need. But most importantly, we have the prayer shawls that have been prayed over by saintly women all across this world. And if you put this peaceful cloth, and the reason we call them, somebody says, well, why do you call them designer prayer shawls? Because we can wear these anywhere and be covered in prayer. So go to my website and under the merchandise tab, order you a prayer shawl, and I'm sure you will be blessed. Let me share a moment of prayer with you as we open this session of Power to Win. Oh Lord, our God, how excellent is your name in all of the earth. And we reverence you because you are a mighty God and a faithful God. There's nobody like you, and you're just magnificent all by yourself. So we come to you this evening asking for your blessing, asking that you will give us the strength that we need in order to navigate to our assignments and bring peace and harmony in our lives is our prayer. In Jesus' name. Again, thank you for joining with me tonight. And did you tag a friend or a family member or a coworker? Go on and invite other entrepreneurs, business executives, emerging leaders, pastors, missionaries, ministry leaders, youth. Invite everybody to join with us. Act fast to start your share party. Let them know it's time to jump on. Our scriptural reference for this season is always found in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 9. But as it is written, eye hath not seen nor ear heard, neither have entered into the heart of man the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. For the past several weeks, we've explored our current theme. Our current theme for this season has been shifting paradigms to align with destiny. Shifting paradigms to align with destiny. And our current series topic is the promise. And I have encouraged you to pursue after every promise that is especially intended for you. Because when we live in our promises, we align ourselves for destiny. Our aim is to focus on relative promises that God has vowed to give to those who trust Him. So again, I encourage you to take a moment after this broadcast, go to my website, www.valeriedanielscarter.com, and look under our series library tab. There you will be able to go back and listen to the segments 1 through 4, on the first topic of the promise, which is the promise of wisdom and knowledge. And our series goes on. We have another 4 segments on the topic of the promise of favor and insight. They are 2 very relevant segments that you just want to listen to over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, when I was scripting these promises, it was blessing me just to even write them. And I began to internalize and ask God, God, give me more favor. Help me to have more insight. Please increase my wisdom and my knowledge. And as I began to and I tell you, when I was writing, I was being blessed writing my own script. I got encouraged because I recognized that God doesn't do things for naught. There's purpose behind everything that God does. And because there's purpose behind everything that God does, those of us who have been called by Him must learn how to walk in the purpose of the promise. Walking in the purpose of the promise requires that we sometimes have to shift or realign ourselves. And it's not difficult to realign yourself. Have you ever had a car that kind of got out of alignment? The tires were still good. You just kind of needed to get the alignment in place so the car would go straight. I know some of you probably are saying, well, I've been off so long until I don't know if the Lord will allow me to come back. Listen, He says, I want all of you. I want you in totality. Come unto me, all of you that are heavy laden. He says, I've got something that's called rest or peace for your wearied mind. Don't be afraid to now step into a level to where you say, God, I want to live in your promise. Realign yourself with ministry. Realign yourself with a church. I don't care what church you go to, as long as it is a healthy Bible, Christian teaching church, and that God is in that place. Align yourself back in church. It's time for us to really, a friend of mine told me this last night, and I thought about that thing all night long. She said to me, she says, Val, she says, you know what we need to start telling people? We need to start telling people that COVID is here, but the pandemic is gone. So come on back to church. And I thought about that thing. You know, I wrote a book, and you can get it on my website, From Pandemic to Promise. Every pandemic has had a season where it existed. And then after that period of time, you don't even hear people talk about it anymore. There's going to come a day where people are not even going to be talking about COVID. You all understand what I'm saying? Another pandemic may come a year or 10 years from now. That's going to take precedent over what we're experiencing today. So it's time for us to move on as believers and re-engage ourselves totally in ministry. It's time for us to move on and to recapture the place that God has for us. The topic, the promise, came from a message that Bishop spoke a couple months ago. His topic was, what do you do when all you have is a promise. There are many of you that are just barely existing and waiting for the fulfillment of the promise. But what I'm going to tell you is the race has never been given to the swift, nor the battle to the strong, but it's given to those that say, I'm going to hang in there despite what I may be going through. And we all go through things. We all have situations in our life that shift us in one direction or the other. But we have to learn how to steady ourselves. We have to learn how to be peaceful and calm and allow the storm to rise over and dissipate. Because at the end of the storm, there's a rainbow. At the end of the storm, there's a release that God brings, that God gives. The enemy wants you to get carried away with the wave or the tide. But I'm here tonight to tell you, don't get carried away with the tides of life. There's going to be some ups, there's going to be some downs. But hang in there. Stay focused. Stay connected to your power source. Your power source is God. We have so much to be thankful for. Why are you saying that? We have so much to be thankful for. I'm saying it because you don't really understand where you possibly could be. There's more going better in your direction than is going wrong. Or better said, there's more going right than going wrong. James Lennox wrote a song that says, I've had some good days. I've had some hills to climb. He went on to say, but God's been good to me. And my good days, they outweigh my bad days. So sometimes you have to shift your focus to align with purpose. And for the last 8 weeks, we've talked about aligning ourselves and shifting the paradigms and aligning ourselves in a place that God has for us. So I encourage you. I think you see I'm getting excited. I'm getting happy because I know that it is only the enemy that does not want us to capture our promise. And I don't want you to allow him to win. I want you to be stronger than your weakest point. I want you to be greater than your greatest fear. I want you to think broad and big about where you're going and what you're doing. And don't let anybody allow you to compromise your standard because they're not going anywhere. I tell young people all the time, don't worry about that person. They're a turkey. And eagles don't hang with turkeys. So why are you even worried about a turkey when you're getting ready to soar? I encourage you, have the mentality of the individual that is soaring despite where you are. Well, tonight, we're shifting our focus for the next several weeks. And I'm going to ask you to assist me. Our philanthropic focus for what we do is staged on 4 pillars that we actually each and every week stand on, internalize, think about, figure about how we're going to do it. And I am the supervisor of Kenya East Africa. And our prelate is Bishop Jerry Ivory Sr. And I am the supervisor. And I've been charged with the responsibility of being an encourager to people in Kenya. And I get a joy out of doing it. As a matter of fact, the first time I went to Kenya, it was a very difficult situation. I was invited by the president and at the time the Secretary of Health and Human Services, Tommy Thompson, to go to Africa. And there were about 90 or so people that were invited. 30 business leaders, 30 individuals from the medical industry, and 30 politicians or so. And they flew us over to Africa, and we visited various countries in Africa. And we were in Rwanda, and we got a call to come downstairs. Secret Service had gotten information that we, or the entire group, that terrorists were looking for us. And of course, I was young then. I had no clue the danger I was in. And we went down and we were all in the ballroom, and they began to explain to us the situation and what was going on. And they said, we're trying to decide whether or not to take you all back to the United States or for you all to finish the mission. And we talked amongst each other, and some of the politicians looked at me and they said, Val, what are you going to do? And I said to them, I said, well, I'm going to pray. I said, and I'm going to get direction as to what I really should do. The next morning we got up and we had CEOs from major pharmaceutical companies on the plane with us, just a bunch of very high-level executives. And many of them, their companies sent planes to take them and bring them back to the United States. And they offered, would you all like to come back? We can take 8 people, or we can take 10 people, or we can do this. I didn't have a plane, or my company couldn't afford to send a jet to come and get me. But I could have gotten on one of their planes because they offered. But I was compelled to stay. And when I stayed, there were others that said, is she staying? We're going to stay. And so we left Rwanda that evening, and we flew to Kenya. When we landed in Kenya, we could not land at the airport because of the threat that was on our lives. Now, I had flown on this plane all the way from America to Africa, never knowing what was in the storage bins up top. As soon as we landed in Kenya, many of the military guys and the FBI and the Secret Service guys started pulling down these long machetes. I then realized that I might be in a little danger. But I had a strong feeling that I belonged there to do a work. And they landed the plane in a remote field. And they sent these minivans to pick us up, small groups at a time, because if we're going to die, they didn't want everybody dying together. And as we got to the hotel, there were thousands of individuals in front of the hotel trying to prevent us from getting inside of the hotel. But the Lord allowed us to go into that hotel, and He allowed us to finish the mission. He allowed us to finish what we came to do. We went there, we gave cows, and there were things that the United States presented to Kenya at that time. But there was something about the people that changed my heart. And since that day, I've been a part of trying to make lives better in Kenya. So I went from almost losing my life in a place to giving life. That's what I'm going to talk to you about tonight. The 4 pillars that I base the foundation of what I do on is the pillar of education. Because if you educate people and you give them the tools to work with, they can get things done. The pillar of medical support and wellness. It's important that you're healthy, because if you're healthy, you can't get things done. Then we have the 3rd pillar of leadership and empowerment. In the last 5 years, we've put over 2,700 women in business in Kenya. And then the last pillar is the pillar of ministry initiatives. The power of God is what we need in order to be able to execute on the other 3 initiatives. So in October of this year, a team of 37 volunteers traveled with me back to Kenya. I try to go every year. And they traveled with me, and I believe it was life-changing for many of them. They went with me to Kenya to help me support and to execute additional things we needed to do in these 4 areas. I'm so grateful for their unselfish commitment and their ability to want to give to others. Even though many of them ended up seeing things they had never seen before in life. And it helped put a different perspective in their mind. You know, you can see something on TV, but until you actually walk through it and smell it afresh, until you actually are in that environment, you really don't have a full understanding of what it is. And it's almost, and I'll say almost, to the point to where I wish I could take every young person from America to Kenya so that they can experience the joy that many young people get when they have half the things. Not even half, not even a tenth of what some of our young people in America have. From a medical camp day to women empowerment sessions, to feeding orphans and feeding the elderly, and sharing in ministry training day after day after day, this ministry team shared with people unconditionally. And over the next 4 weeks, we're going to share excerpts from our trip to Kenya. Because during this holiday season, I want to challenge you to join in sponsorship with me and be a supporter of the vision. So for the next 4 weeks, we're going to ask you to help us as we continue to strengthen these pillars. The pillar of education, the pillar of empowerment and leadership, the pillar of medical and wellness, and the pillar of ministry. I'm asking you to sow into one of these pillars, our educational initiatives. We have young people that all they need are some books and some supplies and some internets. I want to thank certain organizations that I work with. They gave me 256 iPads and computers to take over to some orphans. We took those iPads and computers over to that orphanage. And within less than three months, some of those young people were competing and educational workshops at levels 5 times higher than was ever expected. All they needed was the tool, the pillar of women and leadership initiatives. I believe in self-sustainability. And there's so many women and so many leaders that want to be in business. And all they need is just a little help to get their business started. The pillar of medical and wellness initiative. We've built a clinic in Bundo. We partner with a hospital, and you'll hear from that doctor over the next 4 weeks. And she's going to talk to you and share with you, if you would just help them, the things that they could do. One medical camp day, we saw over 870 people in one day. The doctors that went with us, they worked day and night. There was a little child there. I'll never forget it. And her mother brought her there because they were saying she had a cold and she wasn't feeling good. She had a fever. When they brought the child there, they laid the child on the examining table. And one of the doctors that had come from the United States, Dr. Lisa, looked at the child and said, "You brought her here for something simple like a cold. We can take care of that." But when she looked at the child, the child's leg, one leg was almost a leg length shorter than the other. And she said, "What happened?" And the mother said, "I don't know. I thought it was a deformity." Lisa examined the child. And what she said to me was, if this mother had had this child in a hospital or a medical facility or with a birthing midwife that knew what she was doing, they could have corrected this ailment right away, and the child would not be with a short leg. But the good news was, before we left, that night Dr. Winters had worked all day long, all night long. She found a place that could help support Dr. Francis in our medical initiative with this child. Sometimes all you need is access. And that's what Dr. Smith was able to give to Dr. Francis that weekend, access to help that child. So, as blessed individuals as we are, we're in receivership of the promise of God. I'm going to ask you to work with me over the next 4 weeks. 100% of everything that you give will go directly to changing and improving lives. Many of us have no idea what it means to make a 2-bedroom home, or a 2-room home, not bedroom, out of mud, and hope that it doesn't rain for several weeks so you'll have a covering over your head and a covering for your children. We live from day to day not knowing where our next meal comes from. Dr. Carter, will you feed me? There were elderly people, 85 and 90 years old, that hadn't eaten for 3 and 5 days. Do you think I was going to leave there and leave those people hungry? No way. But my goal is to ask you to help me by supporting the vision. So how can I do that? If you go to my website, www.valeriedanielscarter.com, you can give on my website. Or you can send a cash app to $PR, the number 2, win. $PR, the number 2, win. You can go to PayPal. PayPal's giving site for us is PR2, the number 2, win. PR2, win. Or you can go to Givelify, Kenya East Africa Women Initiative. Again, Givelify, Kenya East Africa Women's Initiative. Or you certainly can mail it to us at P.O. Box 242-143, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, 53324. That's P.O. Box 242-143, Milwaukee, Wisconsin, Well, my time is out, and it's been my pleasure to share with you. I'm going to ask that you, for the next 4 weeks, watch how ministry can change lives. Help support us as we support others through our 4 initiatives and our 4 pillars. Won't you close in prayer with me? Father, for all things, we are thankful and grateful. First of all, we thank you that you've blessed us to be able to give. And I ask that you touch the hearts of these, your listeners, and allow them to sow into good ground. And then allow us to be a blessing to those that are in need. This is my prayer. In Jesus' name, amen. Always remember, when you give to the poor or the less fortunate, you're lending to the Lord. Whether your gift is large or small, it's needed. And I'm grateful for your consideration and your support. Remember again, you have the ability to share during this holiday season. Why don't you gift somebody in Kenya a gift that they never thought that they could receive, a gift of education, a gift of wellness, a gift of ministry leadership, or a gift to even go into business. We'll make sure they know the gift came from you. Again, thank you for joining with me. Until then, remember to like us, follow us on Facebook and Instagram, subscribe to our YouTube channel, and be sure to visit my website. Each Tuesday night, 7 p.m., I'll meet you here. Because why? You have the power to win.
We're so glad you joined us tonight. Please like us on Facebook and follow us on YouTube and Instagram. We look forward to seeing you next week. Remember, you have the power to win with Dr. Valerie Daniels Carter.